Welcome back to another TerranScapes video. This video, we're going to take a look at the cliff mold that I have been working on. And this has been a involved project that has taken me quite a while. And this is partly why my video count has been a little bit lower lately. But I wanted to take you through this in a more detailed way than I normally do. And talk about how I used different Smooth-On products to make the mold, and then discuss some of the problems that I had with it, some of my goals. I had some serious problems, but it's my hope that by doing this, I can hopefully save somebody else some of the headaches that I had. And perhaps, if somebody sees something that I should be doing when I'm making these kinds of molds that I'm not doing, then maybe they could shoot me, a tip. Always welcome. Because there's going to be so much content for this, it's probably going to be split into two, and I'm going to put the chapter menu above so that you can jump around to the various parts that you're interested in. So there's a lot to talk about with this, so let's get started. So this being the piece that I wanted to cast, I wanted to have a mold that had certain characteristics. I wanted the mold to be fairly tear resistant, as this has a lot of aggressive texture in it. So it needed to be able to be removed without tearing easily. I wanted something that would allow me to preserve the flat sides because, because this is going to be tiling with other pieces, and I want them to butt up as seamlessly as possible to this piece. And I also wanted it to have a lip because I'm going to be hand rotocasting this, and so to have a little lip in the mold to catch the casting resins and expanding foams, it'd be nice to have that. So I'm going to talk about this in more detail, but I wanted to just discuss quickly the actual products that I used. So I chose Reoflex for this project, partly because I already had, this is Reoflex 40, I already had Reoflex 20 on hand and I needed to use it, and luckily Reoflex 20 has some of the properties I was looking for. It has very good tear resistance, and it can stretch and has a good elongation before it breaks, which is exactly what I was looking for. The problem with Reoflex is that it has a very, very low viscosity. Viscosity is measured in CPS. I looked it up. I can't remember what it stands for, but basically this has a 1500 CPS rating. Water is a 1, and MoldStar, the MoldStar platinum silicones that Smooth-On sells is about a 12,000, and basically when you get above 15,000 you're looking at something that needs vacuum degassing. So Reoflex doesn't need that, but it's very thin. It's thinner than honey, so it's going to move around a lot while I'm making the mold, which is not optimum because I'm going to be making a brush-on mold. So low viscosity is a problem. Also, now this is Reoflex 40. This is the hardness rating when it is cured. I started with Reoflex 20, and the problem with that is that it's got a lot of flex, and in the sidewalls of that piece I just showed you, I don't want it to slump into the mold, into the mother mold, I should say. I want it to retain its shape as best as I could, so not a good choice for that. And the other problem I have with it is that it has a really long cure time. The Reoflex rubbers have about a 30-minute cure time, and so that is, 30 minutes cure time. 30-minute, we wish. No, 30-minute pot life, and then it has a 16-hour demold time, right? Now, the demold time's not important to me. I'm willing to wait, but if I want to apply layers and not have them run off, that pot life needs to be shortened up a little bit. So, how did I come up with solutions to try to help this become a better brush-on mold for me, mold compound? Well, first, as I already had some on hand, this is Kick-it. Kick-it is a liquid additive to urethane rubbers. I don't know if you can add it to plastics. I'll have to ask Smooth-On actually about that. I've been wondering. But it is it accelerates the rate of curing, and so this can be basically pushed to about an 8-minute pot life instead of the 30, and you add it in very small amounts, like 1 to 3% by weight of the compound. I was adding it at about 1 milliliter, maybe 2 to about 16 ounces. So do I know if that's a 1%, 3%? No, but I know it's being conservative, and that's fine. Anything to just speed it up a little bit. The other thing, this was new that I bought, this is Ure-fil. This is Ure-fil 11. It's a powdered fiber, basically. And when you mix it into the rubber, it will obviously, it gives it more body, and so it increases its viscosity, and that will also affect its pot life a little bit, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. So this is the solution that I came up with to try to get a brush-on mold out of Reoflex. This is not probably a common use for Reoflex, but I never let that stop me. I'll share with you, of course, this is the whole point, how it went, what went wrong, what went right, and hopefully you can learn something from that. So, because this piece is going to tile, I'm going to make this as a quarter, and then all the other quarters should have, be a mirror image for each of the sides, and so that they should tile to form a nice seam. So when I created this, I did my best to create a template to cut this edge and have that be the same cut here, and use a similar slice of the rock. There are videos on this in my playlist. It's the Ocean Board project, and there are many descriptions there of how I got to this point, so I encourage you to go and check them out. But I was not 100% sure whether this would make a good join, and thank you to one of my viewers suggested I make a test mold of one of the corners and then cast it and put it around to the other side. So what I did, took that advice, and I took some of my Reoflex 20. All right, now this gives you an idea of its pliability, right? Reoflex, if you're a long-time TerranScapes viewer, you know that I have used Reoflex 20 for my flexible roads in the past. So it doesn't have, a lot of body. And what I did is this also gave me a chance to mix in some of the Ure-fil, so you can see it's got a little bit of an odd texture, so I can get a handle of how that's working, how much would it slump, and you can see, of course, that it was dripping, and I was kind of pushing it around. But I wasn't too worried about a good quality mold, because I really just needed a mold, just for one cast. Let me see here. Oh, I just want to make sure I got this on the right side. I think this was it. Yep. Okay. So I applied my Reoflex, let that set. Then I thought I'd try something I haven't done before. This is a plaster bandage mother mold. This is something I've seen many mold makers do in the past. These are not high quality plaster bandages, but they were good enough, and actually I got lucky, and this inside did not delaminate. I really needed to keep it more wet and blend the layers together, and I got better as I got to the outside. I was worried it'd fall apart, but it didn't. So I make the mother mold for it, peel that off. Now I have something to rest it in when I go to make the cast, and I made the cast using Smooth-Cast 320. That is the resin I'm using all the way through this project, so you'll hear me say that again multiple times. So here is my section that matches it up now, and then I can now turn it around and line up the top to the top of the edge here and check that that's going to be a good joint, and it looked pretty good to me. So at this point I figured it's an all go and move on to the next stage. So at this point I needed to think about the mount for the master, because I wanted to have that lip that I mentioned before, so that it would catch the resin when I was casting into the mold. And you'll notice that the front edge of this sits lower than this edge. There's a description of why that is in the previous video talking about this, but I needed to lift it up in any case to get this off the ground. So what I did is I lifted it up, and then I applied, I think you should be able to see it, maybe right there. I applied, it's really late tonight, and I'm trying to be quiet because the missus is asleep. It's really late. So if I seem a little like stilted, that's why. So what I did then is I created a clay dam all the way underneath this, and smoothed that to a fine edge underneath that. So I've got a nice crisp drop down to the board. I'm just using some pink foam for the mount. It is a relatively light piece, so that was worked out just fine. And then you know, do the old typical, right, seal all the gaps with clay and get that all smoothed out. Once I had that done, I could start applying to it. Now, of course, you know, you have to seal it. I ended up buying another can of Smooth-On Sonite wax. And I have to say, I've used bowling alley wax before, and Sonite is not that bad. I think it's better, and it's pretty comparably priced. It's been a while since I've used it. It's got a nice smooth consistency, so you know you can brush it into the areas really effectively. And for something like this, using a good release agent is really important. so I had that all done. Now I'm going to apply my Reoflex. Now the Reoflex I applied in several untampered with layers, right? I didn't add any Kick-it, I didn't add any Ure-fil, because I wanted it to not lose any of its properties. I don't know. I suspect that things like its elongation and its tear resistance are going to be degraded by adding Ure-fil to it, particularly, and possibly the Kick-it, but not as much likely. So I wanted the best properties against the surface, plus because of the low viscosity of the Reoflex, which is, again, you don't need to vacuum degas it, that means it's going to flow into all of these pores on its own, and I'm going to get really good detail you know, of the surface. I did brush it in, however, the very first layer, just to make sure, gave it a really good brushing. But I can only apply very small amounts because it runs right off, and then I'm scooping it back up and putting it up top, running off, scooping it up. And that got a little better when I started adding Kick-it to it, and building up layers eventually allowed me to feel more confident adding Ure-fil and Kick-it to it to be able to build this up a little bit more quickly. This took many layers, and the real honest truth is that I wouldn't do the whole piece all in one go. This is a problem, and it's probably in part because of my nervousness, but because it was so thin in terms of its viscosity and running off, I didn't want to have to chase it all the way around. So what I did is I would just kind of do a small spot, then go away, then come back, do a small spot, then go away, come back. And as long as you don't let it set up firmly, then it bonds to itself just fine, and that worked out very well. I did tint the layers, so if this was green and this was brown, I knew that I needed to make this green before I go on to other areas. So that helped me track as I moved around the piece to make sure I got even coverage. Now, one of the problems that I had is that you can see, right, that this has sort of, you know, shelves built into it, and then there are very crisp, you know, prominent edges. And what I ended up finding was that I ended up continually building up areas that were deep, right? So I got this pooling effect and couldn't really get good coverage of the points. And I didn't want to add too much thickener until I got almost the entire point covered. Probably not needed, but that's where I went with that. The other thing that I wanted to do, oh, I don't think I mentioned it, maybe I did, is that for these edges, I wanted to add cheesecloth to this. And the cheese, so I'd pour the Reoflex, I'd lay a couple pieces of cheesecloth, stick them into the rubber, let that set up, then I put another layer of Reoflex, another bit of cheesecloth. For making latex molds, I found that the cheesecloth adds a lot of rigidity to the rubber, and that was my goal, to help increase the chances that this would stay firm rather than crumpling inside the mother mold. So that was the process that I aimed for. Now, once I added more and more Ure-fil, I didn't mix it properly. This was a nightmare. I'm going to explain, I'm going to do another video that will be just on how to mix Ure-fil or any type of material like this, because I didn't read the directions, because I've done so many molds. I was like, oh, I've added fillers before. It was fine until I got to a very heavy amount, say like 50-50 Ure-fil Reoflex. And what happened is, because I was applying in patchy areas, right, I made an application to fill this area, start to bulk it out quickly and get done, and that didn't cure. I didn't notice right away, and I put another layer over it because I was like, oh, it's just tacky because it's going to set up, and I just kept adding. No, this entire area all the way around did not set, and I'd already been into the mold for a long time. So rather than, after I was done panicking, rather than freak out more, I ended up cutting out all of this material, cutting it out up to here, actually, right back down to the foam, scoring the existing rubber really aggressively so that the new rubber would bond to it tightly, and then reapplied all the way down the bottom. So I got a photo of what that looked like, and you'll see in the photo where the cut was made and the new materials being added. Once I got most of the coatings on, I'm going to show you the mold in just a minute, but I want to explain what you're going to see. The next decision, if you're not used to making big molds like this, is you have to decide where you're going to make cuts in the mold to open the rubber up to get the master out and the casts. In this instance, I want my cut lines to be my mother mold lines. All right, so I'm going to show you the shell, and I have to open the shell up in some spots. Now, creating the parting lines for the mother mold is a big deal because if I say wanted to just have, I can't just have the split right like this. I mean, I could, but getting this section off, right, if you can picture a big hard plastic shell, this is gonna want to lock the mother mold to it. My initial thinking was to go with 3 cuts, come up through here, and then come down through here, and make 2 corner pieces, right, and a corner in the back. I didn't want to go with 4 pieces, which I think would have made easier for for removing the mother mold. So one option would be to come in, right, and parse this into 3 sections, right, and then have the 4th here. So we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4 cuts, right? But it's more to assemble. It's more difficult to make the mother mold. It's I'm going to have more cut lines, and I'll show you why I don't want to do that. So I ended up with going with the 3, and And in fact, I'm just looking at my notes. Is there something I wanted to show you before? No, I think we should take a look at it now. But I want you to look at this piece right here, because it's going to come back to haunt me a little bit later on in the process. So this chunk